Thank you. Good to be with you.
First of all, what's the case that the court opened its new term on?
So this is a case called Sackett, basically involving the scope of the Environmental Protection Agency's authority under the Clean Water Act to regulate not just typical waters like streams and lakes and rivers, but wetlands that connect to bodies of navigable water, but that are not themselves running water. The EPA has long asserted its authority to regulate wetlands where the wetlands have some impact on the quality of water in other parts of the United States. And these challengers argue that the EPA's authority over wetlands is actually very narrow, and the wetlands basically have to be physically connected to another body of water in order to be regulated under the Clean Water Act. And the EPA says that that very narrow understanding of its authority would really curtail its ability to protect and maintain clean waters throughout the United States. So a very big environmental case and a very big administrative law case. So the term is kind of, off to a running start.
Yeah, I mean, at the end of the last term, the court was already starting to take away some of the powers belonging to federal agencies. So it'll be interesting if they continue to move in that direction. All right, but I want to talk about Justice Brown-Jackson, who participated in her first oral arguments today. Did she make a mark?
She really did hit the ground running this morning. She was the third most vocal justice from the bench. Sometimes new justices just kind of take a little time to hit their stride. They start off quiet and get their bearings. She did not seem to be, at all retiring or shy from the bench. She was really active, pressing the challenger's lawyer on this very narrow vision of the EPA's authority that the lawyer was asserting, and asking what Congress intended, making pretty clear that she believed that Congress did intend to give this agency a broad authority to regulate, the waters of the United States, including wetlands where necessary. So, I don't think she's going to be a shrinking violet from the bench. In terms of her impact on the makeup of the court, as you said, she replaced Justice Stephen Breyer, who was, a moderate liberal justice. And I think she's very likely to vote in ways that align with the way that Justice Breyer would vote in similar cases. And yet I do think that the kind of, symbolic significance of having, of course, the first Black woman justice on the Supreme Court, and also the three liberal members of the Supreme Court, all being women, two of them women of color, is not going to be lost on the country. So even if she is typically in dissent, or in dissent in many of the court's most important cases this term, as I expect she will be, she's going to, be dissenting in a voice that is different from any voice that we have heard on the Supreme Court before. And that I do think is quite significant, even if, the vote breakdown doesn't change at all.
Do you expect this will be a term filled with 6-3 decisions, or do you think that we might see Chief Justice John Roberts swinging sometimes with the liberal side and maybe having some 5-4, or even, going the other way? What do you think?
I think we will see quite a few 6-3 cases. I think it's entirely possible that Chief Justice Roberts will cross over and join the more liberal justices. So, 5-4 rather than 6-3 conservative victories, I think, are likely in the future. But I have to say, there are a number of cases on the docket this term involving the question of how much the Constitution permits the use of race by government decision makers. So cases involving affirmative action in higher education, involving the Voting Rights Act and considerations of race when drawing legislative districts, the constitutionality of the Indian Child Welfare Act and its placement preferences, which are being challenged as impermissibly race-based. And this is an area where actually Chief Justice Roberts has long been kind of at the forefront of this conservative push to eliminate the permissibility of using race, even for, the purposes of increasing diversity or eradicating or responding to histories of discrimination. So he has been in some ways the hardest liner on those questions on the court, or at least among them. So there, I think he could well be in a 6-3 majority, but on other issues, I could well see him crossing over. So the court looks more like 5-4.
So do you think, if you were a betting woman, by the end of this term, do you think that affirmative action will no longer be allowed, race considerations for college admissions, for example?
I think that is the most likely outcome in the two cases, one out of Harvard, one out of UNC, that the court will hear actually at the end of October. Those arguments are scheduled for Halloween. And I do think that this court has given every signal that it will rule that considerations of race in higher education admissions are unconstitutional, in all or virtually all circumstances. And to my mind, the big question is how cabined that holding is. Is it just about college admissions, or is it about the use of race kind of across the board in other contexts, not just college admissions? But I do think that it's very likely that these challengers who say these programs are unlawful will prevail in these cases.
California here is obviously a strong state for LGBTQ rights. What case is coming up in front of this court that could challenge some of those rights that are currently afforded?
The most important case that the court is scheduled to hear is a case out of Colorado, basically involving a challenge to a non-discrimination law that requires individuals in the commercial marketplace to provide their goods or services on a non-discriminatory basis, including not discriminating on the basis of sexual orientation. And the plaintiff in this case is a would-be website designer who argues that requiring her to comply with this non-discrimination law would basically require her to speak in violation of her free speech rights in ways that are inconsistent with her religious conviction. So that's the big challenge, I think, to a non-discrimination law. And that there too, kind of like the affirmative action cases, I think there's a very good chance that this web designer, right, challenging the non-discrimination law will prevail. And the real question is how broadly could the court write something narrow that is, pretty limited to the context of the kind of service that she seeks to provide. If it rules broadly, it could call into question the constitutionality of non-discrimination laws, and we have them, in every state, in many cities, as a matter of federal law, right? These what are called public accommodations laws that say, if you're going to go out into the commercial marketplace with a good or a service, you can't discriminate. You have to make the service you're making available or the good you are selling available, to all comers. And the court, I think, could raise real constitutional questions about those laws broadly. So that is one that I am watching very closely.
Yeah, and it seems like Chief Justice Roberts is in favor of going narrow, but some of his conservative colleagues are in favor of going broader. And that's one of the reasons why it was such a shocker when the court ended the last term with the ruling that reversed Roe v. Wade, right? Which, of course, made it federal law to grant abortion rights. And since it got overturned, about half the states have moved to severely restrict those rights. And in that case, what's interesting is, they had said this was established law. So I wonder if you think other cases considered established law will be revisited and reversed.
Yeah, a couple of things. One, you're exactly right. The Chief Justice Roberts made clear in his separate writing in that case, Dobbs versus Jackson Women's Health Organization, he agreed that the Mississippi law at issue, which was a 15-week ban, he actually believed that law was permissible, but he would not have gone as far as the 5 more conservative justices did, and actually overturned Roe versus Wade from 1973 and Planned Parenthood versus Casey from 1992. But I do think that because the court in that case, very much showed its willingness to overturn even really well settled precedent that had been affirmed and reaffirmed again and again by different Supreme Courts. I think that Dobbs tells us that the court is not going to be hesitant or shy about overturning precedents where it believes those precedents were, wrong, or as the court sometimes says, egregiously wrong. So in the affirmative action cases, I believe the court will overturn a 2003 decision out of the University of Michigan, which upheld the use of race in admissions. But, that court, again, has shown its willingness to overturn its precedents. And so I think that, the normal constraint of stare decisis, that the court presumptively adheres to settled law and only in extreme or rare circumstances overturns its prior cases. I'm not sure that sort of longstanding principle holds much sway with this newly constituted, quite conservative Supreme Court.
All right, buckle your seatbelts, Supreme Court watchers. Professor Kate Shaw, thank you so much for your time and insight today. Really appreciate it.
Sure thing. Thanks for having me.
Coming up, a step forward for girls in sports. California is getting closer to making girls flag football an official high school sport. More on this movement and when it could become reality. That's next on Getting Answers.
5 seconds. 4, 3, 2, 1.
Girls flag football is becoming closer to an official high school sport in California. The southern section of the state's high school sports body voted in support last week. So the next step is for the entire state federation to vote. And if they're in favor of it, girls flag football will be an official sport for the 2023-24 school year. Joining us live now to talk more about the movement is Rob Wygod, the California Interscholastic Federation's southern section commissioner of athletics. Rob, thanks for your time.
Well, thank you for having me.
Yeah, so tell us about the vote. It got pretty overwhelming support, I think, by a 3-1 margin. Why do you think there's so much excitement for making flag football an official girls' high school sport?
I believe that we're in the business of education-based athletics, and we have a lot of different sports we offer for boys and girls. And then there's always other students out there that we do not touch so directly and aren't involved underneath the CIF umbrella. So all those that will participate in girls flag football will just be another example of students that we can interact with and we can have as part of education-based athletics, where they learn the life lessons that help them beyond high school and for their future. So we're excited to bring girls flag football, and you'll see it in the fall of 2023.
All right, so I wonder what led up to this, right? Has interest in flag football grown by leaps and bounds in recent years?
It has. You know, the NFL is very strongly in support of this, since they've been involved with some of our member schools and others around in other states as well. So I think there has been a groundswell for this. I think our young ladies seem excited about the opportunity to be able to play football that they watch on TV and see being played all the time in the tackle football world. And now they have a chance to play a different kind of football. But then again, there are a lot of commonalities with flag football and tackle football as well. So it has continued to grow. And then we think, obviously, once it becomes a CIF sport, we have championships, it will grow even more.
Is flag football a boys' sport or only regular tackle football?
Well, girls can play tackle football, and they do. We have examples of girls who play on the tackle football teams at their schools, but this particular venture will be girls flag football, so it will only be for girls.
So this I know, that girls can play tackle football with mostly boys, which some do, but not many. But can boys play flag football as a high school sport right now in California?
No, they cannot. It's not a CIF sport. And we have a bylaw that's very specific that says if there is a team at a high school that is offered for boys and is not offered for girls, girls can play that sport on, quote, the boys team. But if there is just a girls team and not a boys team, then boys cannot play on a girls team. And of course, if there are boys and girls teams in sports like basketball or soccer, then obviously the students on the boys side and the girls side play for their gender.
Right. All right. I know flag football leagues have become a lot more popular, some of it driven by parents who fear concussions for their kids. I wonder if that was part of the discussion with regard to flag football for girls here, because, you know, even though you pull the flag and you don't tackle anyone, are there still concerns just in terms of like all going up for the ball or, you know, aspects of the sport that still merit examining?
Well, there can be, and there are certain precautionary pieces of equipment that can be worn. There are these soft shell, they're not helmets, but they're soft shell that you could put on your head to help with any kind of collision that happens. But, you know, you may not be aware that the single most involved sport with concussions is actually soccer. There are more concussions in the sport of soccer than there are in any other sport. So while flag football comes on the scene, there are some protective equipment you can wear. But more than that, you know, the head is really not used in the sport of flag football. Like you said, they pull a flag, they grab at the waist. They're not necessarily ducking their head in, doing anything with their head to try to get involved in any kind of activity.
Got it. Now, the folks who voted no on this, what do you think the concerns were? Is it concern that they'd be competing for field time? Is it concerns that, you know, there's some alternative sport that's better than this one? Or is it the safety concerns? Or what are some of the reservations?
That's a great question. And I think that I want to make sure people realize that there were some no votes, but typically in talking with those who voted no, they were in support of the concept. There really was very little feedback we heard that didn't support the idea of adding girls flag football. The biggest issue was the season of sport. Those who voted no just wanted to see the season be in the spring, and instead it's going to be a fall sport. So to be honest, I think most of the no votes were just tied up in the idea that they would have preferred it be played in the spring instead of the fall, which is what was passed.
I see. Right. There's always the challenge of field time, or, does this mean she's not playing volleyball and she's doing this? So, and I get it. Do you think there will be a lot of teams, a lot of schools that will be able to field teams and enough competition, essentially?
We do. And I think one of those issues that we think about a lot is that, our schools will have control of this. They're going to be able to decide when they play, where they play, what day of the week, if they want to play at night before the varsity football game, the tackle football game, if they want to play a different night. Some of our schools have said they want to do Monday night football for girls flag football. So they're all over the different things that can be done. But the schools will ultimately have that control, which is the way it should be. What fits best for them is what they will do. And some of the field space issues, practice times, coaching time that's available with coaches that get involved. And you mentioned, let's say, girls volleyball players. We have no prohibition.
Oh, Rob, I do think we are losing
the girls volleyball player, fall sport athletes. Oh, I'm sorry.
No, that's okay. Not your fault, but I'm glad we got all the great information in there. Rob Wygod, the California Interscholastic Federation Southern Section Commissioner of Athletics, thank you so much for your time, and we'll watch for that vote next month and report back. Thanks a lot. All right, folks, coming up next, it's the latest TikTok trend, the one chip challenge. But doctors and teachers are sounding the alarm as some kids are getting poisoned. More on that next on Getting Answers.
In commercial break.
Have you heard of the one chip challenge? Bay Area school districts and the CDC are sounding the alarm over this latest TikTok challenge that many teens are participating in. The dare is this: eat just one Pocky tortilla chip made with 2 of the world's hottest peppers. Here's the company's own promotional video showing people eating it. Misery is the point, and surviving it is a badge of honor. But is it dangerous? Joining us live now is Kelly Johnson-Arbour, a medical toxicologist and co-medical director at the National Capital Poison Center. Thank you so much for joining us today.
Thanks for having me on today, Kristen.
So, Kelly, school districts and the CDC last week sent out warnings to parents, I got one, about the super spicy Pocky chip. What is it made of?
So the chip is different each year. This trend has been produced by this company for the last 6 years, and each year there's a different combination of chips. This year, the chip features the Carolina Reaper pepper and the scorpion pepper, which are two of the hottest peppers out there. They're hotter than pepper spray in some cases.
Are those peppers that we eat in other things ever?
I mean, there might be. You might like hot sauce and try to buy a very pungent hot sauce made from Carolina Reaper peppers. But remember, in this case, you're getting two peppers for the price of one. So you're getting twice the dose of heat.
Okay, so let's talk about the danger part, right? What kind of reaction is it eliciting in people who eat it?
So it's very irritating to your stomach and to your mouth. So you're going to automatically feel a very strong burning sensation and pain in your mouth and your throat and your stomach when you eat this. But in some cases, it can be even worse. So the active ingredient in these peppers is capsaicin. Capsaicin in our human body actually causes your blood pressure to go up and your heart rate to go up. So if you have underlying medical problems like heart disease or asthma or something like that, you can actually have a heart attack or a stroke from eating these peppers. If you touch your eyes after you eat them, you can have intense irritation of your eyes that can actually cause damage in some cases.
Any documented cases of this more permanent kind of serious damage that you've talked about, serious illness?
Absolutely. There are published cases in the medical literature about people that were otherwise healthy who ate capsaicin for whatever reason and experienced heart attack and stroke. So it definitely can happen. And at Poison Control, we are getting reports every day to our online database, Web Poison Control, about people who are having unexpected or severe reactions after eating these chips.
Why? I mean, maybe this is kind of philosophical, but why do these TikTok challenges start? Like, why do kids want to consume dangerous, painful items and prove with a blue tongue that they did it?
Well, I think that these TikTok challenges offer a sense of family or a sense of collegiality. You know, you're entering into a trend. You can post it on social media. The company will feature it on their social media. And so it sort of lets people form a community, for example. The problem is some of these challenges are innocuous, like the ice bucket challenge from 10 years ago, if you can remember that. I mean, that was pretty harmless. But some of these challenges can be dangerous. And what we need to understand is that in these TikTok videos, you don't see the full story. You don't know what happens after the camera turns off. And sometimes people might have very severe reactions that are not captured on camera. Right. So just because somebody else can do it on camera doesn't mean that it's safe for you to do.
Right. I remember the cinnamon challenge. Look, I want to put up the website where you can buy it. I mean, you can buy it on Pocky's own website, but I also saw it on Amazon, Walmart. It's pretty easy to purchase. But I wonder, right, can its sale be regulated if it has such a great risk?
So it's a food, so it's not going to be regulated that heavily because it's a food that is available for consumption. I think people just need to understand the risk themselves. And also, it's interesting to know that the single chip in that package is about $9. So you're paying a lot of money for something that could potentially cause a lot of harm to your body.
That is a lot of money. Okay, so bottom line, in the 30 seconds we have left, what can parents do? Should we, bring it up to our kids and say, hey, are you doing the one chip challenge? How do we talk to them about it?
I think it's helpful to let your kids know that you are aware of these challenges and to discuss the risks with them. Children listen to us and they take our advice, even if it seems that they're not listening to us. They do listen, and it is worthwhile to bring these challenges up and discuss the limitations of social media with your children.
All right. Kelly Johnson-Arbour with the National Capital Poison Center. Thank you so much for joining us today.
Thank you.
A reminder, you can get our live newscast, breaking news, weather, and more with our ABC7 Bay Area streaming TV app. It's available on Apple TV, Google TV, Fire TV, and Roku. Just search ABC7 Bay Area and download it now. We'll take a short break and be right back.
In commercial break. 6, 5 seconds, 4, 3, 2, 1.
Thanks so much for joining us for Getting Answers today. We'll be here every weekday at 3 on air and on live stream answering your questions. Coming up at 4, more on the deadly shooting of 2 Berkeley High School students in Oakland over the weekend. What police are now saying. World News Tonight with David Muir is coming up next. And I'll see you back here at 4.